Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, Matic. It is extremely early 2000s YA, derogatory. And they get into the private room and he's like, hey Jude, what's up? It's, in my opinion, dumb. So they have a whole sword fight about that. None of the plot really fucking matters in this book. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name's Kate if you're new. You clicked on the title, you know what we're here for. I'm talking about The Cruel Prince today. Some of you might be wondering, why are you talking about a book series that started in 2018? Yeah, I'm 6 years late to this one. I read The Cruel Prince. I must have read it in 2018 because these two weren't out yet, because I then immediately went and read the Tithe series. I got it from the library, so I don't have it anymore. And also, I didn't end up picking up physical copies of it because I thought it was just kind of fine. It is extremely early 2000s YA, derogatory, but it does have characters that cross over in Cruel Prince. And then I had just kind of lost momentum by the time that these two came out. And also I remember the reviews being very mixed of these two. So it took me a while to get to them because I have been waiting for them to show up in used bookstores. So I collected the trilogy and I got through it this year. So I have a lot of thoughts. If you have not read these yet and don't want to be spoiled, this is probably not the video for you. There are plenty of other people that have talked about this book series and probably have done non-spoilery reviews for these. Go find one of those. We're going to be doing a much more in-depth, like plot summary style review of this trilogy because I did kind of read them back to back to back and I took a lot of notes. So a little bit about the series overall. This is the third installment of Holly Black's, I'm going to say Elfhame fairy series because she also has that like Spiderwick Chronicles that deals with fae, but I think that's a completely separate thing than these. But Darkest Part of the Forest, the Tithe series, and the Cruel Prince series all take place in the same world of fairy. So, the story of the Cruel Prince begins in the prologue where our main character, Jude, she is our point of view, first-person perspective throughout this series, is at home with her twin, Taryn, and their older sister, Viv, or Vivi, I think they maybe call her, who is not all human. Her ears are a little too pointed, her teeth are a little too sharp. She is part fairy. When Jude and Taryn are 7 and Viv is, I believe, about 9, Viv's father returns. Her father is Maddox. This was their mother's ex-husband, or like, is now her ex-husband. We learned that apparently she faked her death and ran away from fairy with her fairy daughter. And then, met a human man and had Jude and Taryn. Maddox is a general. He is also a red cap. He is a big character in this series. He shows up, Honor all offended because his wife faked her death and ran away from him. Their father comes in, sees Maddox there, and apparently he's a blacksmith. That's just like a thing that he does. He makes weapons and does like kind of like reenactment type things. So he comes in, sees Maddox, grabs his axe, swings at Maddox, misses. Maddox takes his sword and immediately kills him. Okay, just done. Mom starts to run. Maddox says, do not run from me again. I cannot promise what I will do. She runs anyway. Maddox kills her immediately. He then takes the girls. All of them, because he's like, well, you're all my responsibility now. Viv says that she will hate him forever. He basically says, that's fine. All of these books follow the same structural setup. There is a prologue, there is a book 1, a book 2, and then there is an epilogue. So that is the prologue for this one, is the story of how Jude came to fairy. Book 1, we skip time. Jude is now, I think, 17. I've slightly forgotten. Her and Taryn have both grown up in fairy. Okay, I'm gonna put this here because I'm tired of holding it up. Jude and Taryn have gone very separate routes in how they've learned to survive in fairy. Taryn has gone a much more traditionally feminine route. She wants to fall in love, find a fairy that wants to marry her. Jude wants to fight in the tournament and get hired as a knight. Right, okay, because they're both at kind of the cusp age where they need to either find a way to stay in fairy permanently or get sent back to the mortal realm. And so then, even though they are identical twins, they have chosen very different ways for how they want to approach, finding a way to stay in fairy. This is one of the things that always slightly bothered me in this series, is that I didn't ever necessarily feel that Jude and Taryn's desire to stay in fairy was really fully justified, particularly Jude. Like, the shit that Jude goes through seems Like, maybe you would decide that fairy isn't worth it. Like, she says that they're beautiful and immortal and she wants to be like them, but also they want to kill her all the time. And they often get very, very close. But all this to say, she wants to fight in the tournament. So Madoc, Daddy Dearest, is unfortunately like, you can compete in the tournament. That's fine, because he's been training Jude how to fight ever since they got to Fairy. He trained both Jude and Taryn, but obviously Jude is the one that got more into it. But he says you can't wear like the sash that says that you're open for hire, right? He's like, that's off the table. Madoc also, by the way, has remarried. So their whole kind of Modern Family-esque situation is we have oldest sister Vivi, half fae, half human, of Jude and Taryn's mother. So we have Jude and Taryn, Vivi's half-sister, not related to Madoc at all by blood, but just sort of related kind of by marriage. And then also we have Madoc's new wife, so their stepmother, not blood related to any of those children. What is her name? Fuck, is it Ileana? Is it Oriana? Oriana. Okay. She is full fae. She doesn't really get the girls, but she's not kind of intentionally cruel to them. Taryn and her have more in common because they are both kind of more traditionally feminine. She really doesn't understand Jude. And then there is also Oak, who at the start of the series is 7. He is also full fae. He is kind of sometimes an unintentional demon child, but he does love his sisters. Just he can be cruel in the way that fae can be cruel. Madoc also, by the way, is general to the High King. I didn't write down the High King's name and I've forgotten. So he's just going to be the High King for now. So a little bit about the royal family. We've got the High King. He has announced that he is going to retire. And so, you know, the real jockeying for inheriting the throne begins because inheritance is not tied to birth order. So it could be any of his children that he deems worthy. They seem to only go into the sons. To me, it was unclear on if he could pick one of his daughters, but the only ones that really matter for the plot, there are many others, but the ones that really matter are Balakin, who is the oldest, but not really in line for the throne because the king doesn't really like him very much. We've got Dane, who I think is probably second oldest-ish. He is the one that actually is like most in line for the throne. He's the one that's got the most charisma and has kind of the most political pull. And then we've got Cardan, who is the baby of the family, and also like furthest away from the throne. And we find out that there's some like prophecy stuff about that, but we'll get into that later. So for our purposes, those are the ones that matter for the plot right now. So Jude and Taryn have to go to school. It starts at in late afternoon because the Fae keep kind of twilight hours. Cardan is at school because he's the baby of the family. He's still got to go to school. And he starts tormenting her to try to get her to drop out of the tournament. She retaliates by like salting their food, like the Cardan and his cronies. I couldn't really remember their names. I was just calling them Thing 1, Thing 2, and Luke. So anyway, she retaliates by putting salt in all of their food, which salt is like anathema to Fae. They like spit it out because it's like poison to them. And this kind of starts/escalates this like torment war, which is kind of the enemies part of this enemies to lovers book. So meanwhile, Taryn is like, why can't you just be chill? And I'm going to stay in Fairy by falling in love. And then like 2 scenes later, she's seen talking to Luke and Jude still doesn't see this coming. We'll get there, but this was infuriating to me. There's a brief interlude where like Taryn and Jude and Viv go to the mortal realm because Vivi is always trying to escape Fairy. She has an apartment out there. She also has a girlfriend. Vivi, who by the way is 19, wants Heather, her girlfriend, to move in with her and for her twin younger sisters to move in with all of them, and then like she'll support them all. She's 19. I understand that she's half Fae and she has resources that most 19-year-olds don't have, but this is a child. Jude refuses, being basically like, I fully naturalized to Fairy. I don't fit in the mortal world anymore. And then a dude does grab her and she does like fully kick him in the chest. And her point is like, look what I do to this place. I'm like, he did grab you. I know he was trying to like flirt harmlessly, but also he did grab you. And he was a complete stranger. So don't feel that bad about it. Anyway, Jude is convinced that she doesn't fit in the mortal world and that she can only be in Fairy. So she does the tournament. She does pretty well, but kind of no one really is paying attention to her. Or at least that's what she thinks. However, it seems like the crown prince, essentially, like the guy that's the most in line, Dane, did notice. And he comes and is like, hey, I want to talk. I want to give you a position. Jude asks for knighthood. Dane offers spy because Jude is mortal and therefore can lie. Like, there's a moment where he says, like, how has Maddox been having, like, you use your ability to lie? And Jude, like, is like, what? What are you talking about? And he's like, oh, he hasn't been. Interesting. I'm going to, though. She does not like that. She wanted honor and glory, not work in the shadows. But it's a job, so she takes it. In return, you know, he asks her, like, what do you want? And obviously he's a fairy, so it's going to come with a price. But she says, I want the ability to not fall for glamour, for fairy glamour. I want it to be unaffected by it. And so he gives her this boon of, you will not be affected by any fairy glamour, except for the ones that I make. Loophole. Sorry, not sorry. So Dane is kind of an asshole. He does, however, then immediately use glamour on her to make sure that she can't go tell anyone else about their little conversation and the offer that was just made. So, gives her a little bit of power, takes something away. But, you know, she swore. So she's working for Dane now. There's some more scenes of torment that are not the most interesting part of the book for me. Like, Thing 1 and Thing 2 go a little too far with the fairy fruit that causes, like, a kind of drunken intoxication. They make her, like, take off all of her clothes before Cardan and, like, steps in and is like, hey, enough. But of course he has to do it in the way where he's like, I just couldn't be bothered, because he can't actually be seen, like, defending a mortal. That would ruin his reputation, I guess. So, like, nothing too terrible happens to Jude, but, you know, it's not great. She then also goes on a spy mission. She meets the kind of, like, trio of the, like, head of Dane's spy network. They don't go by their real names, because of course they don't. They go by nicknames of the Bomb, the Ghost, and the Roach. There we go. The Ghost is half mortal, very quiet fae. He doesn't talk a ton, but he's the one that she goes on these kind of assassination missions with. The Bomb is a loud, outspoken munitions expert. She is also described as, you know, very more human-like, and so therefore very beautiful, because the Fae do tend to be like, if they are human-like, they are extraordinarily beautiful. If they are more animal-like, they tend to be more gnarled and twisted and exceptionally ugly. And then there is the Roach, who is, I believe, a goblin or a hobgoblin, something along those lines. So much more like bestial, animalistic, versus the Ghost and the Bomb, who are much more human. That'll kind of come into play later. Her and the Ghost go on a mission to Balakin's house. Balakin is the oldest prince, but not the one that's in line for the throne. Cardan also lives with Balakin. I don't remember if we knew this before, but we find this out then if we didn't. Jude also gets a glimpse of a little bit more why Cardan might be the way that he is when Balakin starts, like, viciously beating him for, you know, not doing what he was told. It's typical, like, I do this because you're weak and I love you type abuser bullshit. It's nasty. And yeah, we learn a little bit more about what's going on with Cardan, and they take off. Jude is in her day job, you could say, doing typical gentry things. You know, her father is a high-ranking general. Her mother is a lady of kind of the court. They go to parties and, you know, they dances and things like that. And meanwhile, Jude starts getting kind of seduced by, courted by, I keep wanting to call him Luke. His name is actually Locke. Meanwhile, Taryn has, like, a secret admirer that she won't tell Jude about. And, like, remember how Taryn said, I'm gonna stay in fairy by making someone marry me. 2 scenes later was seen talking to Luke over in the corner. And then, like, 2 scenes later, Luke is trying to kiss up on Jude. Also, Taryn keeps saying things like, I think you'd really like him. I think you'd really like him. Anyway, there's also this subplot about, so one of the more upsetting things about Balakin's mansion, everything about Balakin's mansion is upsetting, but one of the worst things is that all of his servants are glamoured humans that are like automatons. They are completely robotic. Their fingers are rough and chapped and raw. They look like drained of life. They're in really bad shape. She breaks the glamour on one of the servants. She, like, sneaks in and, like, tries to get this girl out. And then they are riding these horses that are made from essentially like wheat. They get conjured into horses that can fly over the bridge of water between that separates fairy and the mortal world. And as they are flying, the servant decides to fall off the horse and into the water because she can't live with the memories of what happened to her in fairy. Super upsetting. And yet Jude wants to stay. Anyway, I have lost some of the threads of this, but somehow I think in these missions of sneaking in and out of Balakin's mansion, she ends up with this page of Cardan's handwriting where it's just her name. It's like written out in the page, like the font changes to more his handwriting, where it's just like Jude, 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 Jude. It's creepy, obsessive, okay? While all of these kind of like day job parties, which by the way are all leading up to the coronation where the High King chooses his successor, and her like nighttime spy missions, she, you know, is getting courted by Locke. They go to parties together and end up like kissing all night. She doesn't go farther than that, but like maybe kind of wants to. Her stepmother, Oriana, sits her down and really, really warns her about getting pregnant with a fairy child, because she was a consort of the High King. She is not anymore, but fun little fact, used to be married to the High King. Meanwhile, in this kind of like Cardan thing 1, thing 2 torment war, the guy thing 1, whose name I cannot remember at all, is just like really going after Jude. He's really got a like deep hatred bone to pick with her. I think basically just because she's mortal and is daring to live in fairy like a gentry. And I think he just hates mortals. But anyway, things escalate to the point where she kills him. Whoops, she buries his body in the woods or something. I forget exactly what, but its body does not get found. So anyway, that's like right before the coronation. Book 1 of The Cruel Prince ends with the coronation. Daddy Dearest gives Jude a sword that was actually made by her blood father. I mentioned earlier he was a blacksmith, he was a weaponsmith. He made a sword for her, and so she gets her dad's sword. They go to the coronation. There's this whole subplot about dresses that I did not care about, but essentially there was a dress that she designed and then a different dress got delivered, and the one that got delivered was a lot nicer and she liked it a lot better. So that's the one that she's wearing to the coronation. I wonder who gave her that dress. But, you know, things don't go quite as planned at the coronation. The High King steps off, resigns his power, but before he names his new heir, Madoc and Balakin, working together, so the general and the prince with the most military power, stage a coup. They kill kind of everybody. Madoc kills Dane. He doesn't like the High King because the High King has gotten old and in his opinion isn't like warlike enough anymore. Madoc is a red cap, which means that he always wants to be killing and bathing his cap in blood. It's kind of his thing. Balakin kills the High King, kills his sisters, kills basically everybody except for Cardan, who they can't find. But meanwhile, that ends up being kind of a problem. In order to like truly become High King, where you have like a magical tie to the land, you have to, 1, be given the crown by a blood family member, and then 2, you have to like get everyone's allegiance. Like everyone has to acknowledge that you are the new High King. And there's no one around anymore to give Balakin the crown because he just killed everybody that was there that was blood related to him. And then meanwhile, none of the lords and ladies are impressed. Like, they can be impressed by proper, competent shows of strength, but this, unfortunately, just kind of seemed like a guy throwing a tantrum. So none of them are impressed. Lord Royban, who is the main guy from Tithe, basically tells Balakin that he has 3 days to get his shit together, find a family member of blood that will, like, swear to, hand over the crown and do it properly, and then they'll consider swearing to him. Otherwise, no dice. So we got a 3-day ticking clock and book 1. Jude, by the way, is the only member of her family other than Madoc to be there still at this point. Oriana, Taryn, and Oak, the little boy, were all like escorted out, but Jude was separated from them for I forget why. And so she ended up witnessing the entire thing, which Madoc did not want. He tried to like get his people to get his family out. He didn't really want them seeing that side of him. Interesting. So, book 2, we pick up Jude is hiding under a table because the coronation party has just devolved into frenzied madness. Kind of a bloodlust type madness has crept in on the Fae, and it's starting to get not good. She is under the table, and runs into Carden. She basically takes him hostage, drags him out of there. There is a whole knife against the throat, sword against the throat moment where Jude pushes Carden up against the wall and is threatening him to make him go along with this. She takes him to Dane's spy house. Meanwhile, Carden is just like, what the fuck is happening? Who are you? Which honestly was kind of funny because of course he realizes that she is like deep in Dane's inner circle spy network. They meet up with the rest of the spy squad who all escaped the coronation and ran to the safe house, and they make this whole plan to like sell Carden back to Maddox. Jude obviously is the one that's gonna have to broker this deal, so she like ties Carden up and goes back home. At home, she does a lot of spy work. She does a lot of emotional work. Oh, because also a thing that I forgot to mention, before the bloodbath at the coronation, the whole Luke situation came to its full kind of circle moment, okay? Carden comes up to Luke and Jude, who are dancing. He says, time to trade partners, and then looks at Locke and is like, oh, that's your line, isn't it? So, as I was hinting about earlier, Locke and Taryn are engaged because Taryn said she was going to find somebody to marry her, and his whole stipulation was like, okay, I will marry you if you can watch me court your twin sister and not tell her. What a guy. So they have a whole sword fight about that, which like Jude never really fell for Locke's thing. Like she liked the attention, but she never really like was deeply in love with him. So it's less about like the depths of her love for this man and more about the fact that her twin sister didn't fucking tell her. Another fun fact that we find out during this duel though, because Vivi gets very upset about her sisters sword fighting each other and uses glamour on them. This is one of those moments where she shows her kind of more Fae side. It's not cool that she uses glamour on her sisters. She yells, stop. Taryn immediately freezes. Jude does not. This was the thing that she was wondering about because Dane is the one that put that spell on her, and she did not know if it survived his death. And so we learned that it did survive. So the only exception to that rule is dead now. She also puts together a bunch of plot threads that we've been kind of picking up hints at throughout all of her like spy missions and overheard conversations and things. I did actually appreciate this part of it. I thought like her putting together all those pieces was kind of smart. She just can't seem to do that when it's about her own personal life. Anyway, she realizes that Maddox betrayed Dane. Like he wasn't a fan of the High King, but the High King was stepping down anyway. He betrayed Dane for a couple reasons. One of which, Dane murdered one of the old High King's mistresses because he got that mistress pregnant. And by he, I mean Dane. He got his father's mistress pregnant with a child. And so he murdered her to disguise that fact. Reason two is the fact that she was pregnant when she was murdered. However, that child did not die. That child is Oak. So Maddox wants the crown. He's not in line for the crown in any way. He's not blood related. But what he does have is a little 7-year-old kid that's been living in his house that he can just plop on the throne and then have all the power as the regent. Jude, thinking about her little brother Oak, who is not always kind to her, but whom she very deeply loves, doesn't love his prospects as the child puppet king on the throne to Maddox regent. Child kings tend not to live very long. So she's calculating, she's ruminating, she's formulating plans in the back of her mind. She goes back to the spy house. Her and Carden finally break this tension that has been building all book. I'm gonna say, I did enjoy this part. They hate make out in the kitchen. It's great. He like both desires her and is repulsed by her. It's a good time. I don't know that his like repulsion is ever really fully explained either. Like, we'll get into Carden in a little bit, but I will say I enjoyed these scenes. I enjoyed the tension leading up to it. These guys are fun. However, I will say, like, Carden goes a little far in this book. Like, there's moments that I didn't always talk about, like, there's a pixie that doesn't bow, either doesn't bow at all or doesn't bow fast enough, I forget. And he, like, rips off the pixie's wings. Like, you know, horrific shit like that. And then compare that to books 2 and 3 Carden. Anyway, They make out. She makes Cardan pledge himself to her service for like a year and a day. They have a whole hate bargain, tensiony discussion about it because Jude has a plan in order to keep Oak safe that she's not super telling people because, again, boy kings don't live that long. And she loves her little brother. Meanwhile, Jude is kind of wheeling and dealing, whining and dining the lords that she thinks might be more sympathetic to a mortal coming to talk to them, which include some guy from a small court who I fully don't remember and he doesn't really matter to the plot, but also Lord Royban, who mostly I mention because he's from Tithe. We get to meet in this book his girlfriend Kay, who is, wearing like a dress that clearly came from a mortal shop, combat boots, she's eating like Chinese food takeout. And so they don't really go into like Kay and Royban's deal in that series, but I honestly did enjoy them too. The books themselves were a little but I enjoyed Kay and Royban. These lords, Lord Royban and the other guy who fully doesn't matter, hear her out, are kind of interested in what she has to say, but she's also being a little cagey with them of like, I have a plan to put somebody else other than Balakin on the throne. Are you in? They're kind of like, well, that does seem to be the better of the options. So, okay. So Jude gets her like spy crew to agree. She gets Vivi to agree to take Oak to the mortal world and to keep him there until it's like time for him to come back to claim his throne. They go to the party. The 3 days are over. Jude has this whole face-off with Maddox off in kind of a side corridor. She poisons him. There was this whole storyline about her like basically microdosing poison to build up an immunity. And so they end up like both drinking from the same poison cup. She knows that Maddox would catch any kind of deception if she tried to like slip it into just his drink, so they just both drink it. However, he does not have that same immunity, and I believe it is even a like more Fae-specific poison. She has this huge face-off with Maddox. He ends up kind of like stumbling and slowly realizing that she's poisoned him. She ends up beating him, and he's like grudgingly impressed, but also kind of swears vengeance a little bit. Whoops. Anyway, Balakin is attempting to get himself crowned king. There is a second, much more bloodless coup. What Cardan believes is going to happen is that he is going to crown Oak, and then Jude is just going to somehow try to protect Oak. What ends up actually happening is that Oak crowns Cardan. And Cardan is stuck in place because of Jude's vow of power over him. She makes him freeze, and so Oak can like put the crown on his head and say the right words and make that coronation go through. Cardan is furious about this. Meanwhile, the spy trio decide, oh, we figured out your nickname. Because, we've got the ghost, the bomb, the roach. You're the queen. Because, of course. So, end book 2. We have Cardan on the throne. He is in the power of Jude for a year and a day. He is furious about this. We get into our epilogue. Oak is living with Vivi and her girlfriend Heather while Cardan rules. The plan is still to put Oak on the throne eventually, but Jude is just thinking about what a High King could do if that High King was raised in the mortal world. Like, how much kinder could that High King be to the mortals in his realm? She's got long-term goals for this kid, right? But in the meantime, she needs Cardan to, like, hold down the fort, so to speak. Like, she needs Cardan to be the actual ruler while they wait for this to happen. But yeah, Oak is still destined for the throne. He's the presumptive heir. So, Jude kind of drops Oak off in the mortal world, goes back to Fairy. Cardan is pissed and basically tells her that he is going to be the useless party king and she gets to do all the work of ruling for him. Sucks to be you. We prepare for hate fucking in book 2. So, I will say, overall, I think book 1 is my favorite. The writing is pretty decent. I really enjoy her metaphors. I really enjoy Jude wrestling with kind of her increased brutality, the way that she has to get more and more violent in order to stay alive on this path that she's chosen. There is, to me, a nice balance between, like, fast-paced, but also complex enough to keep it really interesting. The very unconventional family dynamics are very twisty and complicated and fun. And one of the things that Holly Black does do well is that she makes the Fae a true threat. She does that balance of, like, creatures that want to harm you. They are intentionally malicious towards humans and are bound by very, very strict rules that they will try to weasel their way around and out of at any chance. I think she manages that knife edge of danger really, really well, and not a lot of people do when dealing with Fae. For instance, I will say it until I turn blue, Sarah J. Maas's Fae are not Fae. They are just fucking elves with a vague seasonal theme. These are Fae, okay? For cons, there's so much talk about clothing. Oh my god, there's so much talk about clothing that I just don't care. I also, like I said earlier, don't know that I really fully understand why Jude is staying in Fairy. Like, she's always scared. Always. Why do you want to live someplace where you're always scared? I also think that, like, some of Cardan's cruelty goes too far. I think Cardan steps in way too late. But also, this might be my favorite one of the series. It's got more, like, court twisty political intrigue in a way that I find really fun. And I really enjoy, like, the tension of Jude and Cardan kind of in the middle of the book and leading towards the end. I really enjoyed. So, Cruel Prince, I think I rated like a solid 4 stars. Like, not a perfect book, but I enjoyed a lot. Next, we get into the sequel, Wicked King. The prologues for 2 and 3, you know, King and Queen, are much more like thematically related to the rest of the books. Like, book 1 is very much just like their backstory, how they got to Fairy. The prologue for this one, however, is just this scene, is a like somewhat metaphorically obvious scene where Maddox is training Jude and Taryn. This takes place kind of in their interstitial years in Fae before we kind of pick up in The Cruel Prince. They are told to go to the top of the hill and claim it, and then to hold it. So, you know, they run to the top of the hill, they claim it, then Maddox starts charging up the hill at them, and they have to, like, fight him off for as long as they can. He defeats them both, and basically the lesson is it is easier to claim power than it is to hold onto it. That is kind of the theme of book 2. So, we go into book 1 of book 2. With a 5-month time jump, Fairy has basically been non-stop parties since Cardan took the throne. He has been holding up his end of the bargain where he does nothing. Meanwhile, Jude is doing all of the work. She is burning all of her wicks at both ends. She is always exhausted and scared and tired. Balakin is also constantly trying to send notes to Cardan because he didn't kill Balakin. As I mentioned, the second coup was much more bloodless. He just stuck Balakin in what is known as the Tower of Forgetting, aka the prison where they send people they don't want to talk about. And Balakin has been trying to get in touch with him. Jude has been intercepting them. But there's, you know, something where it seems more urgent than usual, so she goes to the Tower of Forgetting to figure out what Balakin wants. While she's there, we meet a minorly important character, this prisoner who kind of reaches through at Jude while she's walking past, gets her attention, and tells her that, you know, she knew Jude's mother, who lived in Fairy for many years before she escaped to the mortal world with Vivi. We'll come back to her later, but for now, just kind of bookmark that. So she goes to talk to Balakin. It's not helpful. But one thing that she does find out is that he has been in contact with the Queen of the Undersea, who is the mom of Thing 2. I think her name's like Visenya or something. And she has had a big old thing for Cardan. Like, they used to be together, and then she ended up breaking up with him for, I think, Locke. This whole thing was very messy. I give her a name eventually, but I cannot remember her name right now. No, Nicasia. There it is, not Visenya. Her name's Nicasia. She eventually got important enough that I did write down her actual name. I was calling her Thing 2 for a long time. But, like, her and Cardan clearly, like, have had a long history together. Her mother is now talking to Balakin. One of my biggest gripes about this book, and the reason that I'm going to be pretty brief on the plot, is that none of the plot really fucking matters in this book. We spend so much fucking time talking about Balakin and the Queen of the Undersea. I think her name's like Orlach or something. And none of it fucking matters. There's this thing in trilogies where they will say, like, the classic act structure of trilogies is book 1 set up, book 2 make out, book 3 defeat evil. Unfortunately, this book is kind of light on plot, heavy on make out. Some of you might enjoy that. This book just worked less for me in general, so yeah. Anyway, Queen of the Undersea, Nicasia's mom, attempts to assassinate Cardan, basically is saying, you gotta marry Nicasia or I'll drown your entire island. Because the kingdom is kind of a network of islands. She's like, marry my daughter or I'll drown you. There's an assassination attempt where Nicasia, like, shoots a crossbow for like a secret passage in Carden's rooms, and Jude has to like chase her down and be like, what the hell, man? And so she tells her all of this about how the Queen of the Undersea is going to break the treaty, and also tells her like, somebody close to you has already betrayed you. And I took a look at who was close to her and I went, I bet it's going to be the ghost. Like, literally, it's in my notes. Anyway, Carden is drunk. He was like having a party in his rooms, and Nicasia also kind of shot him because she was jealous because he was making out with somebody else, I think. Anyway, this book is a mess. But Jude is like, your rooms have been compromised. You need to come to my rooms. And there's a whole, kiss me until I'm sick of it line, which I do understand why that's a line that got memed a lot. Anyway, because his old rooms are compromised, they end up moving him to like his now dead dad's old rooms. They hate flirt a lot. We learn more. There's this kind of council of elders that was like not talked about in book 1 at all. But Jude is kind of getting to like know all of them, and they are not super fond of her. She has a very tenuous grasp on her power because she's been named officially like the king's seneschal, I believe is the word, which is essentially his like right-hand person, like hand of the king kind of thing. But, they don't love taking orders from her. But Maddox also is part of the council. He's like the head general. But he also, does start talking to her again. He was still pretty pissed about the coup that she did on him. He can dish it out, but he can't quite take it, is what we're learning about Maddox. We have this whole Hunter's Moon festival where the tensions between Carden and the Undersea Queen escalate. Locke has made some arrangements for Jude to be humiliated because she's like the Mirth Queen, which is supposed to be like a mortal that's dressed in rags but acts like they're dressed in beautiful clothes, which is a thing that they do with mortals that can be glamored all the time. So the mortals genuinely think that it is. She can't be glamored though. So she's just awake and enduring all of this. Carden, meanwhile, kind of like throws in some compliments that are disguised as insults, They dance, they have tension, Selkies invade the party to demand that Carden marry Nicasia. Maddox meets with Jude, and they do agree that they don't want that. They are both in alignment on that. Carden is also pissed. He's not super into the idea of marrying Nicasia. Again, they kind of did a thing, and then she broke up with him. Like, he's kind of pissed about that. Jude kind of suggests, like, they're in this, like, private area after the festival, and she like suggests that Carden just like seduce Nicasia for info. Carden is like, well, what if I seduce you instead? And they have a like, I hate you, but I love you. And then they kind of fuck, but like not fully. But, apparently he knows what to do with his hands. Jude also, threatens Locke to like shape the fuck up before he marries Taryn because he is a piece of shit right now. Which is kind of like the big event that they're all leading up to is Taryn and Locke's wedding. Oak is going to be coming for the wedding, and, everybody knows now about how Oak is, like, the last remaining heir to the throne, so they have all these plots about how the Queen of the Undersea is gonna steal Oak. It doesn't fucking matter. None of this plotting fucking matters. So, similar to how book 1 kind of had all these plot threads that all kind of culminated at the coronation, this one kind of all culminates at Taryn and Locke's wedding. So, we've got the whole Undersea threat, where they're coming for Oak. In theory, they want to drown the Isles if Carden won't marry Nicasia. We've also got the Roach and the Bomb are in love, and at that point, once the Bomb, who's like the hot munitions lady, was like, I'm in love with the Roach, who's like the goblin guy, I was like, oh, well, neither of them are the traitors, so it's gotta be the ghost. Just because that's how narratives work. I don't know how to explain it, but just my pattern recognition, as soon as that happened, I was like, I already thought it was the ghost, and now I'm 100% sure it's the ghost. Anyway, they're both in love with each other. They're both convinced that it can't happen. The Roach has also been teaching Carden, like, spycraft in his spare time, like sleight of hand, all those kinds of things. And the Roach kind of considers him, like, part of the Court of Shadows, is what they refer to themselves, like their spy network. So, Vivi, Oak, and Heather, the mortal girlfriend, all come to Fairy for the wedding. Heather, by the way, still believes that everybody's human. Until they're about to go to Fairy, and Vivi is just like, by the way, we're Fairy! And like conjures up her like magical wheat horses and it's just like, look, they're fine, they're not scary, let's go. Heather's a little freaked out by this, but she does go. Okay, there's also this whole subplot about the smithy. We learn his name in book 2. I think his name is like Grimacin or something, I forget exactly. But she gets a wedding present for Taryn from him that are these earrings that kind of have just like a general beautification glamour on them. Like anyone wearing them will just look more beautiful. She picks them up from the smithy, immediately loses them in an assassination attempt where they're all masked, so she doesn't really know who it was, but she does manage to escape from them. So, time for the wedding. Nicasia said that, like, her mom's move was gonna happen at the wedding. So there's this, like, prison guard spy that she kind of roped into her spy network that comes up to Jude during the ceremony after the reception and says, like, hey, you're needed at the prison. And while this is happening, she kind of looks over and sees that Taryn is wearing a pair of earrings exactly like the ones that Jude lost in the assassination attempt. And they were a wedding present from her fiance. Also, so during this assassination attempt, part of how she survives is she, like, stabs the person in the leg. Locke seems to have a limp. Interesting. So she's kind of, like, on her way out when she also notices that Heather not having a good time. So basically a fairy played a mean little trick on her and gave her, like, cat features. They reversed it. She is, like, looks fine. She's not doing well. And then Vivi uses glamour on her to make her forget and make her think that everything's fine. Anyway, she goes to the prison, and I fucking called it. The ghost is the betrayer. He says, like, I swore an oath to Dane, not you. What actually happened during the wedding is that Undersea Queen stole Balakin out of the tower. Jude gets knocked out, and book 2. So she wakes up in the Undersea Kingdom. I did find the descriptions of the Undersea Kingdom very interesting and you know, cool and weird. But she does have to stay there for like a month before Cardan arranges for her release. And in that time, she is basically starved. They glamour her. Remember, nobody really knows that she can't be glamored to think that they are feeding her, but she does not really get food. So we eventually figure out that the deal that Cardan made for her release was that the Undersea Queen could attack basically a person of her choosing without any kind of retaliation. The camp that she attacked was Lord Roybin's. He's got the like fae but kind of mortal raised consort. She was very badly injured during this attack. She is not dead. She is okay, but was very badly injured. I really wanted to know more about that. I'm really annoyed at how much the first-person perspective of Jude limited the information that we have in this series, because that could have been an interesting plotline, but we hear about it in like a paragraph. So Balakin is out. They end up having this big confrontation. Balakin ends up like poisoning Cardan at a party. He tries to frame Jude, but because Jude is immune to glamour, she is able to kind of get around it. And then when that doesn't work, he's kind of very thrown for a loop. She ends up like confronting Balakin, tricking the antidote out of him, and then he kind of gets really pissed, attacks her, and the violence escalates, and she kills him. Whoops! Second time. 2 for 2 of killing important dudes and then having to bury their bodies. So unfortunately, this one, she is not able to disguise as well as Thing 1's death. Nobody ever found his body, by the way. She has to just like dump him in the sea, but unfortunately he was working with the Queen of the Sea, so his body is found. But we deal with those consequences later. So she comes back to Cardan, who has now been cured. However, unfortunately, he was left alone and tricked by Taryn. Taryn dressed up like Jude, pretended to be Jude. He gave away half of his army to Madoc because Taryn asked him to, and he thought it was Jude, and he just trusted Jude enough that he was like, yep, whatever you say, babe, and gave it away. And Jude is somewhat complimented, but also furious. Because not only did Taryn betray her with Locke, she has now betrayed her with Madoc. Their sister relationship is fucked, y'all. So Cardan is tired. He's just exhausted. He's just gotten over being poisoned. But he tells Jude, you know what I'd really like right now is for you to just marry me. And then you can be High Queen. And you don't need to have this stinking vow over me where you can control my actions. But you'll have so much power. Just marry me. And no, we don't need any witnesses. We can do it in secret. It's fine, baby. I really feel like she should have seen this coming. But she falls for it. The thing is, as I said, this whole book is just fucking nothing. Because all of this plotting with the Queen of the Undersea, all this building her up to be this big villain, Their final confrontation is just the next morning. Like, her and Cardan get married at night. They have kind of sexy time in the bed, but like, they don't really go anywhere, but they like make out a lot. And then he just like rolls out of bed the next morning, finds out, oops, Balakin's dead. He didn't know that. Jude didn't tell him. Goes out and just like intimidates the Undersea Queen into backing down. This is one of those areas of missed opportunity for me, because there is a thread throughout this book about how being the High King is like a magical tie to the land. And boy, do I wish that they'd gone more into that. We'll talk about this again later because it comes up again in Queen of Nothing. This is a thread that is almost non-existent from Cruel Prince. She does not really mention this land tie much at all. Kind of hinted at in Wicked King, where they're just like, oh yeah, by the way, the fact that it's been really stormy, that's because being High King means like the land is tied to his mood. But like, it's just like a couple sentences here and there. I want more of that. I love that shit. So anyway, he's High King. He has ties to the land. He pulls up a new island out of the sea and tells Queen of the Undersea, I'm more powerful than you, back down. And she just fucking does. End book 2. Oh, but also, she does demand, because like Balakin was her, I want to say liaison, like she'd hired him basically as an ambassador to the court, like to Cardan's court. And so the Queen of the Undersea is like, I want retribution for the fact that my ambassador got killed. And so Cardan turns to Jude and is just like, okay, fine. I exile you to the mortal realm until the crown pardons you. And she goes, what? You can't do that. I'm High Queen. He just doesn't say anything, and everybody laughs and nobody believes her. That's why you don't get married in secret. You need witnesses for that shit. I know she's like 18. It's fine. So, Queen of the Undersea, after all this fucking buildup, just backs down, and Cardan exiles Jude back to the mortal realm. End book 2. Epilogue. Jude is living in the mortal realm with Vivi and Oak. They are nursing their respective heartbreaks because Heather did in fact break up with Vivi when she got her memories back and realized that Vivi had glamored her to take them away. She didn't like that, so they broke up. Shocking no one. Don't do that shit. Haven't we all learned from Buffy that you don't mess with your partner's memories? Anyway, they want to work together. They want to figure out some way to deal with Maddox's betrayal, to deal with Cardan's betrayal. That's going to all be in book 3. So, overall impressions of book 2, it was kind of unfortunately just the book 2 makeout. The final confrontation was fucking nothing. Cardan is very mercurial in a way that I do think is somewhat intentional, but like to me it was often not clear, like, is he actually as drunk as he seems all the time? Especially in book 1 in Cruel Prince, I really had a lot of suspicions because Jude mentions things like, wow, he's moving really steadily for how much he's been acting drunk. Like, and I'm always like, is he drunk or is he acting drunk? We never really get into that more. We do get a little bit more into his motivations about how, like, there was a prophecy at his birth, and so everyone thinks he's the worst, and he's just like, well, if I'm already bad, I'll be the worst. It is a little bit, you know, blah, blah, daddy issues, but so it goes. Also, Jude just fucking goes through it in this book. She gets beat up so many fucking times. She gets almost killed in the assassination attempt by Locke. She gets, like, starved for a month in the Undersea. She gets just the shit kicked out of her, like, this whole book. Like, and this is another one of those where I'm like, you are so miserable all the time. Why do you want to stay? Anyway, we get to Queen of Nothing. Final book in this Elfhame trilogy. Prologue for Queen of Nothing. As I mentioned, they're usually thematically related to the book. We get at Cardan's birth this whole prophecy about he will be the destruction of the crown and the ruination of the throne. And only out of his spilt blood can a great ruler rise. Then we also get a little bit, because, you know, Cardan was very much neglected by his mother. He was, you know, left to nurse on cat milk and all of that shit. A little bit later, we get a whole bit about he's doing an archery contest with his cousin and ends up getting tricked. So there's like a mortal, they're trying to shoot an apple off his head. They switch arrows, and so his cousin just immediately shoots the mortal dead and is like, it was Cardan's arrow that killed him, which is technically true. And part of his whole, like, well, if they think that I'm bad, I'll just be the worst thing, right? Okay. He wasn't set up for success, but that's kind of where he's coming from, right? we have some kind of time skip. Honestly, I didn't write it down and I don't think it matters. It's some number of months. Everybody's settling in badly. Jude is taking kind of odd jobs from like independent fae that live in the mortal realm and have business that they need mortals to do, including she goes to go battle a like red cap that has become cannibalistic, like she's eating other fairies. And so they like have this whole face off. Jude manages to like beat her enough that she gets like impressed and gives her some information, which is that Matic has a new alliance and Carden is going to be dethroned. So she's got that in her mind. She comes back home and Taryn is there. Taryn is visiting from Fairy. Why is she visiting from Fairy? Because she killed Locke. Whoops. So it was Taryn in this one at least, but those twins, man. So there's going to be an inquest to figure out what happened to Locke, because unfortunately his body was discovered, murdered, and she needs Jude to go because they're going to glamour her. Like if Taryn goes, they're going to just glamour her and she's going to have to tell the truth and they're all going to find out what she did. But Jude could say, honestly, no, I didn't kill him. And also, I don't think Taryn actually knows this. Jude can't be glamored, so Jude could also just lie. But also, fun fact, she also maybe killed Locke because she's pregnant. And suddenly she realized that her child was going to have Locke for a father. And maybe she didn't want that. Anyway, these twins are murderous, but I do get where they're coming from. You know what I mean? Vivi, meanwhile, is like working on stuff with Heather. They have a very fragile kind of reestablishment of contact. But we're going to pick up on that later because Jude's got to go back to Fairy. She stops at Locke's place, like Locke and Taryn's place, gets dressed in Taryn's clothing, goes to the court, and Carden is the one leading the examination. He does his whole like, okay, I'm gonna glamour you just so that you have to tell the truth. She kind of feels it settle on her, but it doesn't actually affect her. He starts asking her questions. Someone makes some stink about like, what if she's resisting glamour? Because there are like items that you can use to resist glamour, which is a thing that Dane even brought up when Jude asked for that. I think it was like hawthorn berries is one of them. He's like, you can have hawthorn berries. And she's like, yeah, and then they can rip them off my neck. So she wanted something more permanent, but there are ways to resist glamour other than that. So Carden is like, well, then I'll have to examine her privately. And they get into the private room and he's like, hey, Jude, what's up? Meanwhile, though, on the way there, a servant girl does like trip and tell Taryn, remember they think it's Taryn, that Matic is coming. Because remember, Taryn was the one that got Carden to give over half of his generals to Matic. Matic is coming to take Taryn away. So they get to the study. Carden immediately, hey Jude, hey, did you get my letters? How you doing? And she's just like, what? Letters? Well, so what? How did you know? And he's like, you think I wouldn't know? You think I wouldn't know it's you? Come on. But also she's like, what fucking letters? And he's like, you didn't, oh. Before they can really have any kind of meaningful conversation, there's an explosion. Taryn gets kidnapped and, dragged off to Matic's tent and eventually to their new camp. I didn't quite understand why, because she got like fully drugged, like knocked out and like kidnapped, like fully kidnapped. If Taryn was working with Matic, why did they have to drug her and knock her out and kidnap her like that? Wouldn't she just come willingly? Anyway, Matic's new alliance is like the queen of the high north, the like super northerly area. The actual monarch is this like child queen who's got this fucked up golden bridle thing that they're using to control her. The actual power is being held by either a married couple or a brother and sister. I've forgotten at this point. But like this pair of regents. They've got icicle crowns. They're cold and bad and Jude sneaks around as, in the guise of Taryn. Matic does not immediately get what's going on. And in sneaking around, runs into, who'd have guessed it, but the ghost, who tells Jude that apparently his whole betrayer arc was because he gave up his true name to Dane, which is the name that they can use to command you to do their bidding against your own will, right? And that, he was like ordered to betray her. Whatever, it's fine. In her wanderings, she does discover that the smith from book 2 who made those earrings for the wedding present is also in Matic's camp. He wants more fame, more glory. We also find out, fun little fact, basically every single thing he makes, he also curses. And the crown that is currently on Cardan's brow, the High King crown, is one of the Smith's creations. So we'll get to that. A whole rescue party for Jude arrives. Cardan, the Roach, her sisters, both Viv and Taryn. Also that other Redcap, who I fully could not remember the name of, and so my notes literally just say Grima Wormtongue because it was something like that. They're all there to rescue her. Jude has this whole plan to rescue the ghost. Unfortunately, though, she gets to the cave where he's being kept, and Maddock is there because somebody squealed. The ghost is also gone and on an assassination mission. Jude immediately assumes that it's Cardan, so they fight. Jude cannot overpower Maddock when he's not poisoned. She gets fully stabbed through the stomach. He is fully about to just murder his own daughter when Grima Wormtongue intervenes. So Taryn starts stitching Jude up, and this is one of those moments where we get hints of this whole high monarch connection to the land thing, because Jude is just fully gonna die. She is losing far too much blood. She was stabbed through the stomach. She is fully gonna die. But as she's lying there and her blood is like hitting the ground, flowers are blooming up. And they wouldn't be doing that if she hadn't been accepted as High Queen. That's a High Queen thing. So she heals like just enough to not die, essentially. She rides one of those like flaxseed horses back. She is like waiting in the rafters because she knows that like the assassin for Cardan is going to come from the rafters because that's what the ghost would do. But then basically realizes that she has been set up. The bomb ends up shooting at her because she's the assassin in the rafters, essentially the assassin in the rafters. However, thankfully the bomb misses. Jude slips off of the rafters, crashes onto the table. Everybody's just kind of waiting for the order to kill her because she was exiled. She's not supposed to be here. But Cardan just pulls a whole like, that's my wife! And tells them all that anybody that touches her, they're going to get immediately killed. Because that's my wife. So he's willing to claim it now, apparently. Anyway, end book 1. Book 2, she literally wakes up healing in Cardan's bed. Because, of course. Oak is back in Fairy, Vivi is back in Fairy, Heather is back in Fairy. Interesting. Cardan and Jude finally have a talk. She's been pissed about this ever since the end of book 2. And Cardan's just like, babe, I said you were exiled until the crown pardoned you. You're the queen. You're part of the crown. You could have pardoned yourself at any time. Come on, babe, don't be mad. He's like, I was also working really fast. I found out that he died that morning. Didn't have a ton of time to put a plan together. So, like, sorry, but, like, forgive me. And he, like, also fully apparently has no concept of the fact that Jude has been terrified of him for, like, 2 full books. So this next whole arc is basically just, like, Jude and Cardan kind of finally working out their shit. They do, in fact, fuck. They also do go to the council, and Cardan, like, very much puts his foot down about who we listen to in this relationship. But, of course, the plot waits for nobody. So Maddock and the Court of Teeth, which is this far north court. Court of Teeth is disgusting, by the way. Maddock and the Court of Teeth have shown up to parley. Right before they go out, Cardan is just like, hey, by the way, if this doesn't go well, you just gotta know, I'm in love with you. Okay, bye! And then just waltzes out, and Jude is just like blue screen of death, and it's just like, okay, we're gonna deal with this afterwards. Because she just like can't right now, okay? So, Cardan drops this whole I love you bomb, waltzes out to parley with Maddock and the Crown of Teeth. Maddock has this giant fuck off sword that the smithy made him, jams it into the ground. It creates a crack throughout the ground that just fully cleaves the throne in half. Sounds like maybe that ruination of the throne that people were talking about. Who could have possibly guessed that the prophecy was meant literally and not just that he was going to be a bad king? Who could have guessed? So Maddock decides that they're gonna basically airbud it. Like, they're gonna have the courts decide who they love more and would rather have as a ruler. It's, in my opinion, dumb. But I was like, listen, at least this book is the last one, so whatever stupid shit happens, it means it's over, right? Okay. Cardan does his whole High King Glory presentation. All the lords swear over to him, and then he breaks the crown. Because remember, destruction of the crown, ruination of the throne. Turns out, remember what I said earlier about the whole thing where the smith curses every item that he makes? And there's a certain trigger for what will make the curse happen? So apparently, breaking the crown triggers the curse. Carden's a giant snake now. This part was so dumb. This was so silly. I could not take this part seriously. It's supposed to be tragic, but I found it so silly. So like, you know, the whole thing about the land and the High King are like tied together. Well, apparently that's been kind of reversed now because everywhere the snake goes, the land starts dying. Whoops. Also, like, he fully kills the smith, like, almost immediately. But first, the smith does get out a little bit of prophecy about no true love's kiss will stop it, no riddle can fix it, only death. Okay? This is important later. Everybody's like, well, shit, what are we gonna do about this giant snake? What are we gonna do about this giant land-poisoning snake that's killing all of the champions that we send after it? Let's put a couple pieces together, right? Okay, so we've got his prophecy. He will be the destruction of the crown and the ruination of the throne. Only out of his spilled blood can a great ruler rise. Also, he's cursed now. No true love's kiss will stop it. No riddle will fix it. Only death. Spilled blood, only death. Do we get where we're going here? Okay, so there's this whole subplot that does not fucking matter because it's not what we're going to do about how they take the bridle off of that like regent. She's being controlled some other way now, and they offer it to her. Like Madoc and the Crown of Teeth, they're like, we've got a solution for you for this giant land poisoning snake that's killing all of our champions that we send after it. Use this bridle. It's got a command word. We'll tell you the command word once we're done bargaining. Right? They make this whole plan that, again, this was like the Crooked Kingdom problem where anytime Leigh Bardugo tells you the plan, you know it's not the plan, okay? So they're telling her this whole plan that doesn't fucking matter about how she's gonna bridle the snake and it's gonna be in her control and she's gonna be queen with the snake familiar, I guess. And she's like not super thrilled about this, doesn't super see some more options, but she's like, fine, agrees to it. Says like, how do I use this, right? And remember how earlier they were like, there's a command word, we'll tell you once we agree. Instead they go, oh, tie your hair to it and then your fates will be forever bound. I'm like, they literally just fucking said that there was a command word. Were you listening? Come on. And then she's like, finds out later that of course this was a trick for them to just control Jude and the snake together. Like, of course it fucking was. And she's so betrayed and surprised by this. They literally told you there was a command word and then didn't give you a command word and told you to tie your hair to it. Anyway, she keeps having these thoughts. She's like very distressed that the love of her life is now a giant land poisoning snake and keeps having thoughts about, I could be queen of the snake monster, I guess, but obviously we're not going to do that. So none of this matters. Jude's not doing super great mentally, but of course she is like, has other plans with, the ghost because she knows his like true name that she can command him with. So she's got the ghost, she's got the Queen of the Undersea has like kind of become an ally in this book for what the fuck ever reason. Nicasia kind of came around too. Anyway, she makes the deal with Madoc and the Court of Teeth people that, like, the deal will go into effect when she puts the bridle on the snake, right? They don't get any power until then. And so, of course, that's not what she does. She cuts the snake's head off. Madoc and the Court of Teeth are pissed. They start a very brief revolt that very much does not matter at all because, of course, out of the body of the snake steps Carden, naked and bloody and alive. So, like, everyone immediately stops fighting. They all immediately bow to Carden. He takes the, like, two halves of the throne that got split and turns them into, like, two new, thrones that are side by side so that he and Jude can, like, rule together. And it's all just getting wrapped up. End book 2. There is a little epilogue. There's a coronation for her official, like, High Queen coronation. Oak is officially named heir. There are, kind of punishments and rewards given out to the people, especially to like the unrepentant people. Like there are people who basically said, yeah, we revolted and we'd do it again. Carden continues very much on the that's my wife train where he's just like, she decides whatever my wife wants. They do bring Oak back to the mortal world. Heather and Vivi go with them. There was this whole thing with Heather and Vivi and like Memory and Viv having to do like a quest to earn her lady love back. It was very sweet to read, but honestly doesn't really matter to the plot much, so I'm gonna kind of skip over it, but I did enjoy that part. So, meanwhile, the big traitor, Madoc, what are we gonna do about him? What are we gonna do about Daddy Dearest? You know, he taught you everything you know. He betrayed you multiple times. He would have fully killed you. But, you know, Jude can't kill her father, even if he is her adoptive father who killed her biological father. So, Madoc gets exiled to the mortal world with the, you know, condition that he can never touch a weapon again. Whoops. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes, Madoc. Also in the epilogue, we get a little side from Lord Roybin about how, you know, in that final battle, when everyone like bowed to Cardan and swore that they were like swearing to Jude just as much as they were swearing to Cardan, because Cardan is a snake for like several days. And Jude really is absolutely the one holding that throne together in the meantime. And so, yeah, a lot of people were like swearing to her. Also, I do appreciate that, like, yeah, of course Roybin is going to appreciate Jude. His girlfriend was raised in the mortal world and wears combat boots. Like, of course he likes Jude. So I did enjoy that part. So, overall impressions of the series, of book 3. I know that in the last like half decade, these really have kind of become the blueprint for kind of modern day enemies to lovers stories. You know, everybody's got the knife against the throat moment. I do get it. I get why. I've noticed that there seems to be a bit of a trend where it's either you think that book 1 was the best and book 2 and 3 are not your favorite, or you think book 1 was the worst and you really like books 2 and 3. I'm in the camp of I think book 1 was the best. I think it had the most kind of political plot stuff that actually mattered. I think it had more kind of the proper like tension between Jude and Cardan, like the enemies part of the enemies to lovers. That was kind of the thing with Cardan, honestly, is that she seemed to really be wanting to strike a balance between the like malicious trickster fae and kind of golden retriever wife guy. And like, I feel like there is a way to balance that. I spent a lot of time in Hannibal fandom. There is a way to balance those two, but I don't know that she really managed it, because it kind of is just all of his cruelty is in book 1, and books 2 and 3 are like all golden retriever boyfriend, husband, that's my wife kind of guy. And there's a moment where in the epilogue of book 3, they're in the mortal world and he's like kind of interacting in the mortal world for the first time. He's always lived in Elfheim, and Jude is like waiting for him to start tormenting the mortals. And I'm like, this wife guy? Really? Like, I just didn't believe that. And I wish that I could have believed it. You know, I wish that he had kept that dangerous edge to him, but it just got fully sanded off by like midway through book 2. Honestly, one of my big peeves about this series, as enjoyable as I did find it, I read them very back to back. I read them very quickly. I enjoyed them a lot. Is that really the only time the plot super matters is in book 1. Like, all of the wheeling and dealing super matters in book 1. And then in book 2, it all comes to a head for Cardan to literally just posture them into submission. And then book 3, just so much time spent talking about this Madoc and Crown of Teeth thing. And then literally she just cuts the head off a snake and everyone bows to him and that's it. Like, none of the plot really matters. So I didn't feel like the stakes of it as much as I did in book 1. And I also I know I've mentioned this before, but I really wanted more about what it truly meant to be a high monarch, what it meant to have a tie to the land that is magical. Like, I wanted this to be a consistent subplot, and she was just giving us like little eyedroppers here and there, you know, just like, oh, a little bit about that here, a little bit about that there. I wanted it throughout the whole thing. I love in fiction, like, what it means to be worthy of being a high monarch, what it means to truly serve the land, what it means for people to swear fealty, the blood ties and the land itself. I wanted more. And unfortunately, I feel like part of the reason that we didn't get more is just because of the limits of the YA genre. Like, we don't have the time to have more. And so we would get little bits and pieces of it, but Jude never really understands it. We don't really ever get Cardan's perspective. And so we just don't really get that much of it. I also really do feel like this book suffers from being 100% in Jude's point of view. I think hearing Cardan's point of view while she's in the Undersea, like, we should have fully switched POVs and not gotten anything of Jude in the Undersea. We should have been just with Cardan. That's where the actual story was. And I do feel like there was more to Cardan than we really explored on the page. Like, all of his spy work, he is learning sleight of hand, he's learning spycraft. I have so many suspicions about him often not being as drunk as he seems. Like, and I know that she wrote like a bunch of short stories that are from Cardan's point of view, and some of them take place like during this series. So maybe that's where some of that is. But I don't want to have to read extra textual things to understand this trilogy. I want it to be on the page, you know, even if we have to kind of work it around Jude's limited perspective. I really enjoyed this series overall. I think I would give it like a 3.5 to 4 star overall. Unfortunately, it never quite got into that like 4.5, 5 star range for me, but there was a lot of stuff that I really enjoyed. Am I gonna keep these? Yeah. Am I gonna read the Stolen Heir duology? Honestly, maybe. I really liked Oak. I would be interested to see what happens with him when he's like older, because he's, you know, I think between the ages of 7 and 9, and it's like several years later when he's like 16, right, is when it picks up. So I'm interested in those. I don't think I'm gonna go rush out and buy the books, but again, if I found them at used bookstores like I did with these, yeah, I'm probably gonna pick them up and read them. That's gonna be it for this video, you guys. If you have not read them, I think they're worth your time. If you have read them though, hopefully you have, if you made it this far, let me know what you thought about this series. Do you agree with me that you think book 1 is the best? Do you like Cardan in books 2 and 3 more? And I will see you guys soon with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye. Taryn wants to, or sorry, Jude, he's been training Jude and Taryn, but Taryn obviously is the one that really got into it. No, I keep flipping that. Jude manages to reaches through and kind of gets Taryn's attention and tells her that she knew, sorry, I keep calling her Taryn, because June is mortal. June. Luke is trying to kiss up on Jude. Jesus Christ.